come to the White House every day, sports figures, heads of states, you name it. The one person that more people showed up for, everybody who worked there, was Michael Jackson. He did have his glove on, and he was wearing the red suit, the red jacket, with the black.
What was more nerve-wracking, interviewing for Ulta, like for the CEO role, or interviewing for your positions in administrations, working under president?
When I had the opportunity and did the homework and knew what the opportunity was here, I really, really wanted this. So when I was hired in this role, part of it was like, everything's changing, right? Like the whole world is changing, everything's being disrupted. How are we going to get there?
Insightful conversations with the people shaping the title and escrow industry. Hosted by Close Simple co-founder Bill Svoboda and brought to you by Close Simple, the trusted name in closing communication, helping title and escrow companies communicate during the closing with automated text messages, custom branded email, and the pizza tracker for title timeline. And now, Closing Talks.
Well, Diane, thank you so much for hopping on with me here today. How are you doing over there?
Hey, Bill. Gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Wish it was in person, but we're getting there anyway.
Right. And I see that you're in your home office. Home is Washington, D.C., correct? Or right outside of it?
That's correct. We are actually, Ulta was back in the office mid-July for almost a whole week. And then they put on our mask requirements and others. So I probably spend 3 days a week in the office and then working from home a couple other days as I'm trying to get some other meetings done. So we're fortunate that we can still move forward and, get our work done.
Well, thank you for taking a few minutes here to talk to me. It's an absolute pleasure. And, everyone watching this here, I think you're somebody in this industry that a lot of people know. They know your name, they know your position, they know Ulta, obviously the American Land Title Association. What I wanted to do over the next few minutes, getting, to talk to you, I wanted to kind of get a different sense of who Diane is. We see you on the stage, and I think everybody knows you as the CEO of Ulta. We see you in that professional sense. But I want to talk a little more about you as a person. And obviously, we're going to wrap it around to where do you see title going? What about the industry? But you are fascinating in the sense of before title, you were in government. You've served under 3 presidents, which is amazing. There's not many people that I can say that have sat in a room with one president, let alone 3. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what you're doing right now with Ulta. And I think we might even put in a little about Irish dancing at some point in this conversation too. But I want to start with this. Before, my first impression of who you were was back in Austin, Texas, the last Ulta one in person. And I remember we were down in the basement, and as all title companies have, there's the session time, but the real relationships happen, in the time at restaurants, the bars, the concerts. And we're in this little basement, me and my co-founder, Paul, and you kind of came in and you're the CEO of Ulta. And I remember Paul and me talking to you about where do you see title going? And we had these ideas, and you actually asked us, what ideas do you guys have? I was so impressed with you, and Paul and I to this day talk about that. And there's this level where you're up here, but there's also this level where you relate with people. And that's just something very unique about you, I'd say. So that's kind of my first context with you. And, coming into this conversation today, I think I'm just excited to kind of find out a little more about you. So,
Bill, before we get started, I do want to say my memory of meeting you and Paul was before we even got to the actual venue where we were downstairs, where I know our then president, Cynthia, was singing, and it was an amazing band after a long week. And that was my first Ulta One. So I was really just getting to know the industry. I'd only been in my role at that point from July. So I was on my 8 week, and you and a couple of your other folks within the industry, there was at least 5 or 6 were on the scooters. Do you remember this? Everybody was walking on those scooters.
Yeah, those scooters in Austin.
Yeah, weren't they great? And I remember saying to my colleagues, I'm like, there's the scooter kids. That's who we need in our industry, right? They're the future of our industry. And so when I was hired in this role, part of it was everything's changing, right? The whole world is changing. Everything's being disrupted. How are we going to get there? And I remember looking at you guys thinking they're our future right there. So it was
The
fun that we
scooter,
did get to connect.
the Scooter Kids. That's the name that you.
That were you
Okay,
guys. That was you guys.
I'm gonna tell Paul that we're the Scooter Kids.
It was awesome. You guys were like scooting all over town. And I'm like, that's where we
Those scooters can be pretty freaky though. You know, you got to watch out for cars.
It's true. It's true.
So start here, Diane.
Yeah.
Your family, everybody sees you on the stage. Give me a little backstory. You know, I want to talk about the presidents, what you've done in government and politics. But your family, married, you have kids. Give me a little background on who Diane is outside of title.
Sure. So I met my husband here in DC. At the time, he was still an active duty naval officer. And in my case, I hadn't really known anybody in the military, but I was working in the first Bush administration. And we met, really got engaged very quickly. I think we met in April and we were engaged by October or November. And we moved to San Diego. And we were out there for 2 years. And so I was really fortunate. At that time, I was working still in the Bush administration, but I was able to sort of take my experiences from where I was working. And I went to work in California. I worked on the gubernatorial race out there through folks' contacts. And then when we moved back to DC, we were here and we started a family. We have our oldest is 21. She's down in North Carolina. She lives in Asheville. I have a son who is a midshipman at the Naval Academy. This is his second year. And then our youngest is 16, and she's running circles around all of us. She's a junior in high school. So we have a busy life. We have a dog, and between my husband, who was a naval officer, also worked in the Bush administration, the second Bush administration, in the government affairs in the advocacy world. And so now he does a lot of lobbying on the defense side. His expertise is in cybersecurity and a lot of larger technology issues related to military efforts.
I'm sure, okay, so your husband's in cybersecurity. I'm sure there's never a dull dinner moment. You're in title. Cybersecurity is one of the hottest topics. There's got to be no dull moments at dinner time about security and what's going on in our industry either, I bet.
That's one thing. I think even our kids growing up around here are very involved in the political pieces of things, but also understanding the public policy piece. So as much as, Mark and I love to talk about that stuff, our kids can bring up so many things related to what they do that sort of interacts with what's going on in the world. And as you know, there's so much going on in the world today. There's just so many topics to cover and to stay on top of. It's amazing. But I will tell you, we get, I know, at least for my youngest, because she's the only one still at home, the other two are still away at school, is she gets a lot of her information from TikTok. Now, whether that's good or bad, I don't know. It's just the reality of the world today.
Are you on TikTok?
I am everywhere my kids are. So the short answer
that's
is
a yes.
I follow them. Yes.
Nice.
I seem to show up in a couple of her dance moves too.
Well, Diane, we've already mentioned it. You said you've served under Bush, but you've served under 3 presidents. Which 3 presidents did you serve under, and in what capacity was your position?
Well, my first job out of college, moving to Washington, and honestly, Bill, I didn't even know anybody. It was my roommate and I went to meet her. She was working at what's called a political action committee, the Fund for America's Future, which was the PAC that was created to elect then Vice President Bush, 41, to president. And I was working, I think I was still interning at the time, and the receptionist asked me if I was interested in a full-time job. Did I have a resume? My roommate from college came out to the reception area. I asked her if she had it on her computer, and we're going back a few years, so we had Wang computers back then. She printed that out, and we went off to lunch, and the next thing you know, I had an interview. It was my one and only interview when I graduated from college, and I got hired to work in the scheduling office of then Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush, so the father, 41, under the Reagan administration. And then I stayed working with him through the 88 campaign, and then went to work in the White House press office when he became president in 1988.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so you worked under Reagan, under the first Bush, and then the second Bush as well?
Right. So I worked under first Bush in the communications area in the press office. So in that job, we traveled around the world. I mean, I met the Pope in Rome with the president. went to Japan. I was there when the president threw up in the room when they had to come rescue him. So there was a lot of exciting things we were able to do. I met Michael Jackson, a pop star. It's crazy. Like every day.
Did you show him your TikTok moves? Like, did you?
TikTok wasn't around.
It wasn't around then, but you had the moves.
And I will, this is so interesting, Bill. Like, people come to the White House every day, sports figures, heads of states, you name it. The one person that more people showed up for, everybody who worked there, was Michael Jackson. I mean,
really?
People came from all over just to see him.
So what was that like? What did he do when he was there?
It was crazy. He did have his glove on, and he was wearing the red suit, the red jacket, with the black, and people were just fascinated by him. Isn't that crazy?
Amazing. Did he do any performance, or was he kind of just
up? No, I think he just came in to meet with the president. They usually have him come into the Oval Office. They usually walk through the West Wing, and I think he did come out into the Rose Garden because they did have a photo op at that time.
So you're just a fly on the wall in that meeting, let's say. What do you think they talked about? Michael Jackson and the president. What do you think they talked about?
That's a good question. I'd have to look back in the history books. I suspect oftentimes they had, a nonprofit or something that they were promoting and they were involved with, or he was in town for something. But usually it was connected to something larger. And he might have done Make-A-Wish Foundation. He might have done some work around that work, something like that. Normally that's usually when there was someone at that level of popularity involved.
So you've rubbed elbows with the presidents. You've been in the same room with them. What is it like to be there? For somebody like myself or somebody watching this, we might never experience that. Paint a picture for what it's like to walk into the room with the president and know that the whole world, would love to be there. What is it like?
I have to tell you, it's all inspiring, and it never, ever, ever gets old, because every day it's really different, and you're right on the front line of watching things happen. And then you watch how it gets reported. And it's so interesting because it wasn't always reported the way it happened. And you go, wait a minute, that's not what I saw or heard or how I viewed it. So it really opens your eyes to the importance of, being accurate, making sure people have the information they need, but also understanding like what an amazing reach our communications have, and how it sort of affects how people do business or how they live their lives. I mean, it was a very eye-opening experience to see the impact that, some of those decisions and some of those meetings and other things could have on our culture. Really.
So what I hear you saying is it's not like we see in the movies all the time, and it's not like CNN, Fox News, MSNBC all paints it either.
Right. Back in the day, CNN was the only one around because it was the three major networks, and CNN was sort of the alternative back then. But now it's a 24/7 news cycle. So, much different world. You had a lot of control on your message back then. What information you wanted to get out and who saw it and how. Now people get their information from TikTok and from lots of other places, right? And what's even more interesting, because I was thinking about this as we were talking, so much today, people they don't have the kind of trust that we had in those institutions as we did back then, right? We trusted what we heard, because why wouldn't it be true? So I think the business community has stepped up and is playing a much bigger role. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us in our industry as well.
That's a really good point. And it is empowering leaders to be kind of the microphone to the world too. We each have our perspectives on things. I wanted to ask you this, your specific role, you worked in the communications department then. Do you remember one instance, like put us in that room again or in your shoes, you're working there under these presidents. Was there one story that you kind of look back at with the most fond memories when you worked there?
I mean, I'm thinking of, there are different ones that make me laugh. Like I said, I had the opportunity to meet with the Pope when we were in Italy, which, was amazing.
And what's that like? What's meeting the Pope like? Is your heart pounding like, yes, this is the Pope?
Yeah, because what happens is you never really know. It wasn't until like the 11th hour that we got the call that, because the Pope is the head of state, for the Vatican, he's his own head of state. It was the equivalent of a visit from a head of state. So the president was going to meet another head of state. And we got a call about 40 minutes before the motorcade was getting ready to go saying, hey, there were a couple of us who were Catholic, and they thought that would be a really treat if we got to be part of that. They said, there's a couple spots in the motorcade. Are you all interested? So we were like, yes, right? So we grabbed our coats, we, flipped up our hair, made ourselves look presentable, and we hopped in the motorcade and we went over. And what they do is the press often goes ahead of time, right? So they can be preset before the president comes in. So the motorcade pulls in, they wait a couple minutes, the press corps, the White House press corps gets loaded up, and that's our job, getting them in place so when the president comes, they can get the footage and, cover the event. And so we're all sitting in the room when the president walks in, and he looked at us, he goes, "What are you guys doing here?" In other words, like, that's unusual. And we're like, "It's the Pope." And he was like, "Okay." It was just kind of not normally what would happen, but it was a really special event.
That's amazing. Again, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you here on this platform was because everybody kind of knows you in your role at Alta, and we don't get this backstory of something that really shaped who you are and your perspectives coming into Alta. Well, let's talk a little behind the scenes here of Alta, the things that you're working on right now for this industry. You have the Alta Deeds program, Good Deeds. Talk to me about that, because that's a big initiative that you've been pushing right now with Alta. And for anybody watching this that is new to them, what is Alta Good Deeds?
Bill, this is one of the most exciting things. Again, this pandemic obviously has been terrible for so many reasons, but there's also been some bright lights. And the Alta Good Deeds Foundation was created just about a year ago. We actually had our official birthday in mid-August. But it really, I know, it's amazing. And we've raised almost $700,000. And this is money that we're giving back to communities where our Alta people are serving their communities. I just can't say enough about it. Actually, just yesterday, we went through the second round of folks who sent in their proposals and made some decisions that we're going to announce at Alta One in New Orleans. And what happened was Mary O'Donnell, who was the president at the time, and myself, we were, trying to decide, are we going to be in person or we're not? And it was looking very clear that we weren't going to be in New York City, since it was one of the cities, obviously, that was hit so hard. And then a lot of our big members who had these big parties around, Alta One, we knew that wasn't probably going to happen. We thought, well, I wonder if we could take, Mary offered to sort of step up from West Corps, and she offered to reach out to some of our other large members, that money that they would have spent to host stuff around Alta One, and say, maybe we should take that money, put it together, and use it as sort of seed money to develop this foundation. Because what we saw even before that, when the pandemic hit in March, shortly after we were all out in Colorado, was that all of our members were just stepping up. They were feeding the folks in their neighborhood, or they were taking, care of dogs. And there was just, folks were sending us all this information on social media. And we started calling it the Good Deeds campaign, because everybody was just stepping up like we do anyway in our industry. But we were just trying to highlight it. And we thought, why don't we create this foundation, raise this money, and then we can bring that money back into the communities where our Alta folks work. So we did that. And by Alta One last year, which was virtual, as we know, we had raised, I want to say maybe 500,000. I think our goal was like 150, and we knocked it out of the park. It was amazing how people stepped up. And we were able to give our first round of grants during our second virtual event, as you know, which was back in March. And so we're going to announce the next. So that was the first, and we gave out $130,000 in grants to 22 nonprofits.
Wow, it's fun to hear what you're able to do in this industry. I think one of your strong points, just from what you've done in administrations, is probably getting the message out, making sure everything is uniform, getting people around a unified platform or message. And that's exactly what you're doing here with Alta Good Deeds. So that's exciting. Let me ask you this.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I was being interviewed for this role, it was one thing that I had really thought, this is something would be great, right? And then I stepped in this industry, and it was like people were already doing it. That's the amazing part. All it needed was a little structure, and if you've worked with someone like Mary O'Donnell, she's amazing. If she decides she's going to make something happen. So it was so impressive. And I can't tell you how exciting, and even, for the others who, when we sit on this board, it's just such an honor to be part of something like this, where you see that it makes such an impact. It's amazing.
Well, the people in this industry is really what keeps this industry what it is. When I remember my first Alta event, 2016, Scottsdale, Arizona, my co-founder Paul and I walked in. We had no idea really the size of this industry, and the people The people is there's something about the title industry. It's salt of the earth people. It's good people. It's truthful. It's like hardworking, and we believe the best in others too. Like you want to see other people win, and that's incredible. You don't have that everywhere.
No, let me tell you, having worked in Washington the majority of my career, I can be a little jaded. And there are times where I'm like, is this real? I mean, I do want to pinch myself. I mean, I can't think of anywhere else that I'd ever want to work, or other people, or I can never imagine leaving for that reason. People are amazing. And every day I'm more impressed.
So you talked about, you just mentioned it a couple minutes ago about the interview for the Alta position. What was more nerve-wracking, interviewing for Alta, like for the CEO role, or interviewing for your positions in administrations, working under presidents? Like which one is more nerve-wracking?
Honestly, I was so naive back then. I didn't know any better. Like I had no idea how fortunate I was, when you're young, and I would say when I had the opportunity and did the homework and knew what the opportunity was here, I really, really wanted this. And I think one of the things I did at the end of the interview was tell them that. I made it really clear to the board. I said, you know what, I really want this job. And a couple of people came up to me afterwards and said, you know what, I think that sealed the deal for everybody.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you this, kind of in wrapping it up here, what's keeping you up at night right now in this industry? When you think about title, we've gone through COVID here. There's a lot of, we'll say uncertainty for the future. There's just a lot in the future for us as an industry, the real estate industry in general. Is there a thought, is there something that you keep coming back to going like, this is the focus that we need right now? Is there something that way?
Yeah, Bill, I would say there's a couple of things. I mean, not that sort of can't be addressed, but I think as we know, the world is really disrupted, right now. There's a lot of things happening within our own industry, in the outside world. I would say it's been amazing to see how our industry has stepped up. And, last year was the best year ever for the title industry, and this year is looking better than last year, right? But none of us knew that was going to happen. And we all know how this industry works. It's very cyclical, right? So we know that. But I do think, two things. One, in terms of us trying to get the secure notarization done, because it really has accelerated. The pandemic has accelerated how we do business, right? And where we do business from, right? And how we do it. And we really think this is something that, believe it or not, Alta, our team, as you know, and it precedes me, are amazing. They were the ones when everything started to shut down. We had folks from outside, folks on our committee, from our membership, help draft this legislation. I mean, we have really been driving this piece through. It's a bipartisan piece of legislation. And not only will it help us and our industry, but it'll help the healthcare industry. There are lots of folks in the military who can benefit greatly from this. So I think that if we can get this over the finish line, it would be phenomenal, because I think really.
And Diane, I feel like a lot of people are just going, why isn't it done? I feel that's the overwhelming feeling here, where it's like, this should be there. If I can order an Uber on my phone, order this, or what about this, so
why can't
I'm behind you. I'm behind you on this.
So that, we're getting close. We've got the right folks at the table. We're just kind of pushing, as you know, like the world is happening, unfortunately. You've got Afghan, you've got the infrastructure bill. We have all these things that keep disrupting, but we're staying very focused on that. We're currently looking at, the right after the infrastructure thing comes the budget, and we think that there's an opportunity for us to get involved and to help get further this along. So it just hasn't been given the priority because of COVID and because of all the things happening in the world, but that doesn't mean we're not going to get it. I feel very confident we're going to make this thing happen. And then, of course, there's the external world of, people using technology and AI and other things within our industry, and making sure our members are prepared for that. Like, we feel very confident that we're not going away, but we may be doing our business differently. And I think Alta can play a role in helping prepare people to be ready for that and to, anticipate that and make sure, from a regulatory standpoint, that people know who we are and what we do, and that we don't get disrupted inadvertently as a result of, some of the efforts that the new administration and others are trying to play. So we really making sure we have a seat at the table and having a voice. And ironically, in some ways, I think the pandemic has allowed us to have a lot of these type of conversations one-on-one with some real decision makers, which I think is extraordinarily valuable. And then even for the future, one of the things we're really focused on, for this year, 21, 22, is really doing a better job of collaborating with the realtors and the mortgage bankers and everybody else who's part of this process with us, and making sure that, as we sort of design the ways, the platforms and the different ways that we do business, that we're all on the same page and that we can do that. So like I sit on a advisory committee for MISMO, which I think is going to be really valuable. So making sure we take the knowledge that we have and has been applied to other things and we're applying it to our own business where we're all going to be affected. And I will say this, the title folks step up every time. And I think we've been big drivers. What I like to say is we punch above our weight. For sort of a small, mid-sized association, when you think about our partners, the bankers, the mortgage bankers, and the American bankers, and the realtors and others, we really do provide a great asset, and we really do punch above our weight. And people turn to us for leadership, which has been really, really exciting.
That's great. Well, I'm going to bring it back to that bar, restaurant, whatever it was, basement in Austin that night. That where I was bringing it to in the start, where I said it was interesting. Yeah, it was the scooter kids. It was what I appreciate about you is you're somebody that's looking forward and you're thinking about where does this industry have to go? You realize the people here are what matters and it's going to take it there. And you're really creating a rally for us to move with you with it. And I just appreciate that. You listen and you have insight from all the years of experience you've had working in a totally different area of government, but something that totally relates right here too. So thank you for your leadership, I would say, and for helping us kind of take this industry where we need to go.
Well, Bill, the other thing, this as well as I do, I hear this every single day from our large members, our small members, and our medium-sized members. We can't get enough people, right? We need more talent in our industry. There's just a real need for that. So that is a huge focus for us, is developing our current talent pool, but also bringing in younger folks, more diverse, because that's really the future of our industry. And it's really important that we make it as attractive as possible.
Well, that sounds like something big that you're going to be tackling next. That sounds like a pretty big objective.
It is, but I know you guys, the Scooter Boys, will help us get there.
There we go. Well, Diane, thank you so much for hopping on with me here today. It's fun to hear a little more about who Diane is off stage. And I'm sure, coming into the next Ulta events and everything that way, you got some fun stuff that you're planning. And it's cool to hear, especially like the Ulta Good Deeds, the impact that this industry is having outside of just housing even, what we're able to do under your leadership. So thank you.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate the opportunity. You take care. Keep up the good work.